Welcome back, class. So let's take a look at these systems, right? So in a previous slide, we mentioned that chemicals come together, our chemistry come together to make cells. Cells come together to make tissues. We said there are four types of tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve tissue. And then tissues come together to create organs. Organs create systems. And then we said that systems create the organism. So let's take a look at some of these systems and just kind of lay down a little foundation, some interesting things about them. So how about the skeletal system? So the skeletal system is made up of 206 bones within the body. And the skeletal system, when I teach it by covering what we have here in the middle first. We call that the axial skeleton. So we'll talk about the axial skeleton, which is everything we see in the center, and then I'll focus on the upper extremities and the lower extremities, and we refer to that as the appendicular skeleton. Appendicular skeleton, okay? Now, the skeleton is important because muscles are going to attach to the skeleton. And when muscles contract, it moves the bones. Bones or the skeleton is also a reservoir. I want you to think of the bones as a reservoir, meaning it's a bank. If you have too much cash in your pocket, always a good problem to have, right? If you have too much cash on you, you don't want to walk around with so much cash. So you'll say, you know what, let me put some in the bank. Body does the same thing. If it has too much calcium and blood and circulation, if it has too much minerals, it's going to say, I got to put it in the bank. Let's put it in the reservoir, in the skeletal system. We'll store it there. And on demand, when the body needs, if it needs some minerals, or the person is in a fasting state, or perhaps a malnourished state, then what the innate intelligence the body does, it finds a way to use certain hormones to say, hey, let's pull some money out of the bank. We need some calcium. Let's pull it out. We need some magnesium. Let's pull it out. So the skeleton is really important. It also protects major organs, like your skull is a helmet to your brain. Your 24 freely movable vertebrae are going to protect your spinal cord. The pelvis is going to protect your reproductive organs. The ribs and the sternum are going to protect the lungs and the heart. So pretty neat how that skeletal system works. What about here? Let's look at the second picture. We have the brain, we have the spinal cord, and we have nerves. So most textbooks refer to it as the nervous system. Technically, that's what it is. I just don't like the word nervous, so you'll hear me use the word neural, the neural system. I like to be careful with the words I choose to use. I don't want people around me to be nervous, so we have a neural system. When we teach the neural system, I will address it in a similar way that I teach the skeletal system. I'll focus on what we have here in the center first, which is just the brain and the spinal cord. Just the brain and the spinal cord is referred to as the CNS. What is the CNS? It stands for Central Neural System. The central neural system is what we have in the center, and it is only made up of the brain and the spinal cord, nothing else. Then we'll talk about what we see in the periphery, these nerves that go down the upper extremity. We'll talk about the nerves that go down the lower extremity. And there's also nerves that come off the brain. We call them cranial nerves. So when we talk about cranial nerves and these peripheral nerves that come off the neck or the spinal cord of the neck and the spinal cord of the lumbar spine, we call that the PNS. And PNS stands for peripheral neural system. Peripheral neural system, because these nerves are in the periphery. Pretty neat. Okay, so CNS is brain and spinal cord. PNS is everything else. The CNS, the central neural system, this is like the main processing center. It's the CPU, right? The computer processing unit. That's what the CNS is. All the incoming information comes in like this from the outside to the inside and goes up to the brain for processing. It's the control center. It's also the first system that develops embryologically, which is why most textbooks refer to the neural system as the master system. It's the first one that develops. When sperm and egg come together, it's not called the brain and spinal cord. They call it like a primitive streak first that becomes the notochord, and the notochord becomes the brain and spinal cord. So from that, everything else comes from the neural system after it develops. Okay, the respiratory system. Well, the respiratory system is very important because it allows us to take in oxygen, right? To breathe in oxygen, and the oxygen goes to the cell. It goes to the cell, but what part of the cell, it's really important, you will learn this week, there's a cell called the mitochondria. I'll put an M there. There's a cell called the mitochondria, and the mitochondria is going to use oxygen to help produce energy in the form of ATP. The energy currency of the body is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Adenosine triphosphate. We need oxygen for that. So we breathe in oxygen, goes into the lungs. The red blood cells are going to move into the lungs to pick up that oxygen. They're going to find a way to pump that blood to the heart, and the heart will pump all of that oxygenated blood to all the parts of the body. So the main reason to have a respiratory system is to breathe in oxygen, and then the mitochondria is going to push out CO2 so we can push out carbon dioxide, CO2. Okay. The circulatory system. Well, the circulatory system is made up of the heart and all the blood vessels, the arteries and the veins, and it's going to work in conjunction with the respiratory system. And that's something that's a key point that I'd like for you to understand, is that these systems don't work alone. They don't work independently. We teach them individually, but they all work in harmony together. There really is a holistic perspective that we need the circulatory system, we need the respiratory system, we need the muscular system. They all work together. They don't work without the neural system, right? Everything is intertwined and interconnected. So the circulatory system is the heart and all the blood vessels. The heart is going to pump, especially the right side of the heart will pump blood to the lungs. It'll pump the deoxygenated blood to the lungs, and the lungs will deliver oxygen to the red blood cells. Those red blood cells will go from the lungs to the left side of the heart. This is the left, this is the right. To the left side of the heart, now it's oxygenated, and now the left side of the heart will pump blood up to the brain. It'll pump it down into the fingertips. It'll pump it down into all the abdominal organs and even down to the toes and feet. And then when it's deoxygenated, now that the blood has been delivered, the deoxygenated blood has to find a way into the veins, into the venous system, back into the heart, the right side. And that right side will find a way to pump it back to the lungs to pick up oxygen again. And this cycle happens over and over and over. The urinary system. The urinary system involves two kidneys. So that's the left kidney, and here's the right kidney. You have to get used to understanding that even though this is our reading left, this is the patient's right side, and this is the patient's left. Okay. Then we have two ureters. The ureters are here, and where does it go from, and where does it go to? The ureters go from the kidney to the urinary bladder. And then from the urinary bladder, men and women both have a urethra. A urethra. Little trick when you get into anatomy and physiology too, a lot of students confuse ureters with urethra. Little trick, when you look at the word ureter, how many E's do we see in the word ureter? One, two. We see two E's in ureter. How many kidneys do we have? Should have two. How many ureters do we have? Two. But when you look at the word urethra, how many E's are in the word urethra? Just one. And we only have one urethra. Okay? Little trick. Digestive system. What an amazing system. Again, we'll do this in A&P2. The digestive system, it's designed to take in carbohydrates and proteins and fats, right? It's going to break these down into smaller bits. It's designed to catabolize them, to break it down, only to produce ATP. Once again, ATP. The only reason why we're eating this is we want to be able to break down our carbohydrates into glucose and protein into amino acids and fats into triglycerides. And the body can use that to create ATP. Okay, so the digestive system is really important. We have primary organs like the stomach and the small intestine, the large intestine. Those are like main organs. But then you have like the liver and the pancreas and the salivary glands. Those are accessory organs. Those are accessory organs. Not that they're not important, they're extremely important. And then going back here to the respiratory tract, I just wanted to point this out to you. Let me just erase everything here. Let's go back. When we look at the respiratory tract, right here, if we draw a line straight across, when I teach that, just like when I teach, we can break down the skeleton into a axial skeleton and appendicular. When we teach the neural system, it's the central neural system, then the peripheral neural system. When we do the respiratory tract and system, we can break it up into an upper respiratory tract and then a lower respiratory tract. And you've heard of people having an upper respiratory tract infection or a lower respiratory tract infection. Okay. All right. So going back to the systems, we have the integumentary system, and this is the first system that we get into. This is the first system that we'll talk about in Anatomy and Physiology 1, and we'll talk about the skin. The skin is really important. That's a big part of the integument, but so is the nails, so is the hair, right? So the integumentary system is skin, hair, and nails. It's everything that's protecting your internal environment, right? You have hair in your nose, it protects the internal environment. Hair in the ears protects the internal environment. Hair on the eyebrows, eyelashes, nails, all designed to protect the internal environment. But the reason why the skin is the first is because when we look at the skin microscopically, the skin is going to be made up of the four types of tissues. Those four types of tissues were epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nerve tissue. So we start with the skin because it is made up of all of those. Pretty neat. We'll talk about the endocrine system. Really important system. It is just as powerful as the neural system because the neural system is controlling a lot within the human body, but so does the endocrine system. The endocrine system is involved in producing hormones, and hormones are very powerful. So we'll talk about certain endocrine glands in the brain, like the hypothalamus and the pituitary and the pineal gland. We'll talk about the thyroid gland. You're going to hear a lot about that clinically because how many people say they have a hyperactive thyroid or a hypoactive thyroid, right? We have some people that just look at a cookie and gain weight, and then you have people that can eat a whole dozen donuts and never put on an ounce, right? This is what the thyroid controls metabolism. Then we have the thymus gland here that's involved in the maturation of your T cells. When we're babies, this thing is really getting larger and larger and larger, and then it starts to atrophy as we get older. But the first time you're exposed to different types of pathogens and antigens, this thymus enlarges. We'll talk about the pancreas, we'll talk about the kidneys. So we'll talk about the testes, we'll talk about the ovaries. These are all different glands that have the ability of producing hormones, and these hormones are chemical messengers that can affect other parts of the body. When we talk about the muscular system, we will talk about it as the axial muscular system, and then we'll talk about the upper extremity and the lower extremity. That's how I will teach it. Muscles contract. When muscles contract, they generate heat. But in week 2, when we talk about the 4 types of tissues, muscle has 3 types. What we're looking at in this picture is called skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle because these muscles attach to your skeleton. But then we have cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle refers to the heart. And then we have smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is the type of muscle that's around many organs and your blood vessels. All right, so when we cover the muscular system, we'll be focusing primarily on skeletal muscles. The lymphatic system, the lymphatics are part of our immune system. It runs parallel to all of your blood vessels, and they act as like little lymph nodes. We have lymph nodes in front of our ear, behind our ear, lymph nodes around the breast tissue. We have the spleen, we have the appendix, we have inguinal lymph nodes, we have axillary lymph nodes, we have cervical lymph nodes. These are all going to cleanse out interstitial fluid, which means the fluid between the cells. That's very important. We want to clean out interstitial fluid, the fluid between the cells. So now let's just show you some questions that have popped up from the lab quizzes that I've seen pop up before. So we look at the highlighted structure and let's look at the choices. Is it the appendicular skeleton? No, it's not that. We can cross that out. Is it the peripheral skeleton? No, it's not the peripheral skeleton. Is it the central skeleton? No, it's not the central skeleton. We didn't teach it that way. It's the axial. Right? Everything in blue is axial. Everything in tan would be appendicular. Appendicular. Okay, now we're looking at muscles. What are some of our choices here? Is it the rectus muscles that are highlighted? Well, no. Rectus muscles, even though we haven't really done muscular anatomy yet, but most people know that these are the rectus abdominis, right? Some people say it's the 6-pack. It's really like an 8-pack. Is it the axial muscles? Nope, it's not axial. Is it oblique? Nope, obliques would be here. What's highlighted in blue would be the appendicular muscles. Okay, now we're looking at this structure that's highlighted in blue, and we know that that is the central neural system. But if you look at the choices, it's asking what is the function, right? What is the function? So when you look at the central neural system, that is the control center. That's Houston control. Here we're looking at different endocrine glands. So what's the highlighted one, which is here? So the highlighted one, is it the adrenals? No. The adrenals are right here. That's the adrenal. When you look at the word adrenal, it's the word renal, and when someone's having renal failure, renal is kidney. So if you put the word add in front of it, it means you're just adding something to the kidneys, and that would be the adrenals. Sometimes it's referred to as the suprarenal, because supra means above. Pancreas. Well, yes, that highlighted structure is the pancreas. Liver is not even shown in this picture. And kidneys, well, these are the kidneys here. What are we looking at right here in the throat? Well, that's this. That's your thyroid gland. But when we rotate it to the posterior side, which means when you see the word posterior, posterior means the back side. So when we rotate the thyroid gland to the back side, we see these four little circles. And these four circles are the parathyroid glands. Okay. Then down here, these are the ovaries. This is the uterus. And these are the fallopian tubes, or the uterine tubes, interchangeable. All right, highlighted structure. What's that blue thing, right? That's a give me. They're not making that too difficult. That's the heart. Okay. The aorta is this right here. That's the aorta. Thymus is not showing, and trachea it's not showing. Okay, now this is the respiratory tract, but look, it's looking at this part. If we draw this line, everything up here is the upper part and everything down below it is the lower. So the best answer for the blue is going to be the upper respiratory tract. Now we're looking at the digestive tract, but we're looking at the blue structure. So the blue is the small intestine. The blue here, that's the large intestine. So in here is the small intestine. But the unique part is that the colon, or the large intestine, is like a frame. It's a picture frame. It frames the small intestine. This is the liver right here. And right here is the stomach. Stomach is down in here. Okay. Now we're looking at another part of the digestive tract, but it's looking at the tongue, the salivary gland, the liver, gallbladder, pancreas. So we know it's not liver because it's this and this, right? So it's not the liver. It's not the digestive tract. It's part of the digestive tract. Can't be salivary glands because salivary glands are here. So it's the salivary glands. It's the liver. It's the gallbladder. It's the pancreas. When we combine all of those things, those are accessory digestive organs. Okay, let's take a break here. When I come back, we'll talk about understanding different types of reference terms about the human body.